And suddenly, the entire narrative shifted. What was once being framed as just another viral arrest clip was no longer that simple. The internet wasn't watching a moment anymore. It was dissecting a relationship on the edge of collapse. A father and son, caught in the middle of something that clearly didn't begin that night. Because once people slowed the footage down, once they stopped reacting and started analyzing, they noticed something unsettling. This wasn't an explosion. It was a buildup that finally hit its breaking point. But just when viewers thought they understood the full picture, something else surfaced. A second clip. And this one changed the tone completely. Unlike the first video, chaotic, loud, filled with sirens and movement, this footage felt different, almost like a snapshot taken moments before everything went wrong. No flashing lights, no crowd control, just tension. Heavy, suffocating tension. King Harris is seen pacing, back and forth, restless, hands moving constantly like his body is trying to release frustration his words can't carry. His jaw is tight, his focus sharp but unstable. It's the kind of body language that doesn't come from a single argument. It comes from pressure that's been sitting for too long. And then just outside the center frame, there's another figure. Partially visible, not fully clear, but close enough to matter. Not a bystander. Someone positioned within the conversation. And that's where everything starts to shift again. Because viewers didn't just see presence, they saw involvement. Then comes the audio fragment. Unverified but widely circulated. A voice in the background allegedly says, "You already know what this is about. Don't act like you don't." And that single line detonates the internet. Because now this isn't just about a father and son anymore. Now there's a third presence in the story. A missing piece no one can clearly identify. And once that possibility enters the conversation, everything becomes unstable. Who is that person? Why were they there? And what exactly were they referring to? Within hours, the situation escalates again. Anonymous posts begin appearing across social platforms. At first, they're dismissed as noise, typical internet speculation riding a viral wave. But then the details start aligning. Too many specifics. Too many overlapping claims. One post in particular spreads faster than the rest. It suggests the confrontation wasn't purely emotional. It wasn't just about respect. It wasn't just about authority. It was about something else entirely. Money. According to these claims, there was a disagreement earlier that day involving a business-related decision tied to King Harris's growing independence. Deals, direction, control over his personal moves, things that allegedly created friction behind the scenes. And if that's true, then the entire framing of the night changes. Because this stops being only a family conflict and starts looking like a power dispute. In families where legacy and industry overlap, those lines blur fast. Father becomes authority, son becomes asset, and disagreement becomes collision. Now every earlier interaction gets reinterpreted through that lens. Old interviews, past disagreements, subtle moments of tension that once looked like normal generational conflict now feel heavier. Intentional, layered, and possibly unresolved. Then a verified industry account posts a cryptic message just hours after the footage spreads. You think this started tonight? It didn't, and it ain't even about what y'all think. No names, no context, no explanation. But in situations like this, silence speaks louder than clarity. Because now the internet isn't guessing randomly anymore. It's building timelines. They start pulling old clips, revisiting interviews where King Harris speaks about independence, identity, control over his own path. Then they contrast it with moments where T.I. emphasizes discipline, structure, reputation. Two narratives that never fully aligned. Two perspectives that were always heading in opposite directions. And suddenly, everything feels like evidence. Not of one moment, but of a long-term fracture. A relationship that didn't break suddenly. It weakened over time, until that night finally exposed it. But the most intense revelation doesn't come from the footage. It comes from what allegedly happened after. Reports begin circulating that after the arrest, there was a private exchange between T.I. and King Harris. No cameras, no audience, no performance. Just reality. And according to individuals claiming proximity to the situation, it wasn't calm. It wasn't structured. It was raw. Unfiltered emotion spilling into a space where nothing could be controlled anymore. Words were exchanged that can't be walked back. And that's what has people worried now. Because public conflict is one thing, but private rupture is something else entirely. It suggests conversations that don't end with resolution. They end with distance. And the internet, as always, fills in the silence with worst-case scenarios. Every new detail adds weight. Every rumor deepens the divide. Every replay of the footage feels slightly different from the last. Because now people aren't just watching what happened. They're trying to understand why it reached that point in the first place, and whether it was ever avoidable. At this stage, the situation is no longer contained within a single night. It's expanded into something far more complicated. A narrative shaped by family, pressure, public image, business decisions, and unresolved tension stretching far beyond what the camera captured. And the most unsettling part, no one involved is fully speaking yet, which means the story is still open, still shifting, still unfolding in real time. And as more voices enter the conversation, one question continues to hang over everything. Was that night the beginning of the fallout? Or just the moment it finally became impossible to hide? Nobody saw this coming, not like this. One moment, everything around T and King Harris looked controlled from the outside. Clean posts, composed appearances, the kind of public image that suggests things are handled behind closed doors. And then the footage dropped, and everything changed. Because what started as a quiet, routine night suddenly turned into one of the most intense, most replayed, most dissected family-related moments the internet has seen in a long time. Flashing lights, raised voices, rapid movement, a situation unfolding in real time with no filter, no edit, no warning. And right at the center of it all, King Harris. Standing face to face with authorities, visibly heated, refusing to fully step back, refusing to let the moment slide. And that alone would have been enough to spark conversation. But it wasn't just that. It was what the camera caught between the chaos. According to people breaking down the footage frame by frame, this wasn't just an arrest clip. It felt personal, heavy, like something had already been building long before the cameras arrived. And that's why it spread so fast. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Within hours, it wasn't just trending, it was being analyzed like evidence. Every frame, every gesture, every word in the background. Because you can hear it in the clip. Voices overlapping, tension rising, people reacting in real time like things are seconds away from spiraling completely out of control. And at one point it almost does. That's the moment people keep replaying. A split-second exchange between T and King Harris that viewers are calling the turning point. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to feel like something deeper is sitting underneath it, something unresolved, something that didn't start that night, but definitely showed itself there. And once that moment hit the internet, the theory started instantly. Some people say it exposed months of tension, finally breaking through the surface. Others believe it revealed a private conflict that had never been fully addressed publicly. And a growing number of viewers are now asking one question that nobody can confidently answer. Was this just a situation that escalated, or was it already broken long before the cameras arrived? Because insiders are now hinting that what people saw in that video isn't the full story, not even close. And that's where things get heavier. To understand why this moment is hitting so hard, you have to go back. Before the flashing lights, before the viral clip, before the arrest that turned into a full-blown online storm. You have to understand who T is in the public eye and what that image represents. For over 2 decades, T has built more than a music career. He's built a persona, control, discipline, structure. The King of the South identity wasn't just branding, it became a standard he carried into every part of his life, including his family. And in that structure, King Harris was never just a son. He was part of the image, part of the legacy, part of what the world watched as an extension of T's influence. But King didn't move like someone interested in staying inside a shadow. From early on, he made it clear he wanted his own lane, his own voice, his own identity outside of the name attached to him. And that's where friction begins. Because behind the scenes, according to people close to the situation, that independence didn't always align with the structure T was trying to maintain. What looked like normal father-son moments in public reportedly came with deeper disagreements in private. Lifestyle choices, public behavior boundaries, image control. Small issues at first, then repeated ones, then louder ones. And over time, the balance started to shift. King Harris began speaking more freely, posting more openly, reacting more emotionally online. And every time it happened, attention didn't just land on him, it circled back to T. And that connection, that constant reflection is where frustration reportedly started to build. Because from T's perspective, every action wasn't just personal, it was public. Every moment wasn't just family, it was reputation. And according to insiders, that pressure started turning private conversations into heated exchanges. Arguments behind closed doors, discussions that didn't stay calm for long, attempts to regain control of a situation that was slowly moving outside of it. But King wasn't stepping back. If anything, he was leaning in further. More posts, more statements, more moments that fans interpreted as pushback, not just against expectations, but against the structure itself. And that's when people started noticing something they couldn't ignore anymore. The energy between them wasn't the same. On camera, things still looked polished, controlled, unified, but off camera, fans and insiders alike started describing something different: distance, tension, a shift that didn't match the public image. Then came the live stream. The one people still reference. King speaking openly, visibly frustrated, making comments that many interpreted as more than just casual disagreement. Something sharper, something personal, something that hinted at frustration that had been sitting there for a long time. And even though T didn't publicly respond at the time, sources claim that moment didn't go unnoticed. Behind the scenes, it allegedly triggered conversations that escalated quickly, talks about respect, control, direction, and boundaries that weren't being followed the way they were expected to be. And from that point forward, people say the atmosphere changed. Not publicly, but noticeably. Less warmth, more distance, more tension underneath the surface. And then this. The footage. The arrest. The moment everything private suddenly became public. Now the internet isn't just reacting to what happened. It's trying to understand how long it's been building. Because this doesn't feel like a single incident anymore. It feels like a breaking point. And as more details slowly surface, one thing is becoming harder to ignore. This wasn't just a moment caught on camera. It might be the moment something long-running finally became impossible to hide. And now the question isn't just what happened that night. It's what was already happening before it ever started. The moment that footage hit the internet, everything changed. It didn't roll out slowly. It didn't build over time. It detonated. 1 second it was just another quiet clip buried in a feed, and the next, it was everywhere. Millions of views, thousands of reposts, comment sections collapsing under speculation, anger, confusion. Because what people were watching didn't feel normal. It felt like something had already gone wrong long before the cameras started rolling. The scene was chaos from the very first frame, flashing lights cutting through the night, voices overlapping, commands being shouted from multiple directions, and right in the middle of it all, King Harris, standing face to face with law enforcement, tense, unfiltered, refusing to fully step back. But what made this clip different wasn't just what was happening in front of the camera. It was what people believe was happening behind it. Insiders now claim this footage was never meant to go public, that it was part of an internal situation, something handled in the moment, not for the world to see. Yet somehow it leaked, and once it did, control over the narrative was gone instantly. Because social media doesn't wait for context. It fills in the gaps. And in this case, the gaps were massive. Within hours, the internet split into factions, some calling it a misunderstanding blown out of proportion, others convinced it was proof of something much deeper, something unstable beneath the surface that had finally surfaced in public. But there was one moment in the clip that people couldn't stop replaying. A split-second interaction between King Harris and T.I. No dramatic music, no clear dialogue that everyone agrees on, just a shift in body language, a tightening of energy, a silence that somehow felt louder than everything else happening around them. That's what sparked the real conversation. Because it didn't look like strangers in conflict. It looked like history. And that's where the story stops being about a single night and starts becoming about everything leading up to it. T.I. isn't just a rapper in this narrative. He's a brand, a structure, a public figure who spent years building an image around discipline, authority, and control. King of the South wasn't just a title, it was a statement about order in a world built on chaos. And then there's King Harris, born into that structure, raised inside that spotlight, but never fully comfortable staying inside it. From early on, he made one thing clear. He didn't want to be a shadow of anyone, not even his father. And that's where friction begins. Because when a legacy meets independence, neither side moves easily. For months, rumors circulated about tension behind closed doors. Not explosive at first, just disagreements, clashing perspectives, different ideas about image, behavior, and public responsibility. But over time, those disagreements allegedly grew louder. Because King wasn't just speaking more, he was being heard more. Social media amplified every comment, every clip, every moment of frustration. And with every viral post, the pressure on T.I. increased, not just as a father, but as a public figure responsible for the image surrounding his family. Insiders claim that pressure started turning private conversations into confrontations, that what used to be guidance started feeling like control, and what used to be disagreement started feeling like resistance. King, meanwhile, didn't pull back. If anything, he leaned further into his own voice, more outspoken, more visible, more direct. And that created a loop neither side could easily escape. Every move became public interpretation, every reaction became content, every silence became a question. So when that night arrived, according to multiple accounts, it wasn't the beginning of conflict. It was the breaking point. Witnesses suggest there had already been tension earlier in the day, an argument, raised voices, unresolved frustration hanging in the air long before authorities arrived. By the time the situation escalated on camera, it wasn't starting. It was continuing. What the footage shows is a rapid escalation. Officers attempting to de-escalate, King pushing back emotionally, energy rising instead of settling, the kind of situation that shifts minute by minute until control becomes fragile. Then T.I. steps in, and that's where everything tightens. Not calm, not neutral. According to those close to the situation, his presence carries frustration, like someone who has already reached a limit, stepping into a situation he's seen before. And when father and son lock eyes, the entire environment changes. It's no longer just law enforcement managing a situation. It's personal history colliding in real time. Words are exchanged, the tone shifts, and within seconds the interaction becomes something nobody in that space can fully control. Authorities move in harder, commands sharpen, space collapses. And both are restrained. But what lingers after the chaos isn't just the physical moment, it's the emotional residue. One frame from the footage stands out across the internet more than anything else. T.I.'s expression, not anger, not shouting, something quieter. Disappointment. And that's what changes how people interpret everything. Because disappointment suggests something deeper than a single argument. It suggests expectation, pattern, repeated cycles. Then came the audio. Unverified, unconfirmed, but widely shared. A conversation allegedly between T.I. and King Harris recorded earlier that day. Tense, emotional. At one point, a warning-like statement circulates online. You keep pushing this, it won't end how you think. And whether real or not, that line reshaped the entire narrative. Because now people aren't just analyzing a video. They're reconstructing a timeline, trying to understand whether this was an isolated breakdown or the final stage of something that had been building for months. And as theories grow, one thing becomes clear. The internet isn't reacting to a moment anymore. It's trying to decode a collapse in real time. And according to those still close to the situation, this may not be the end of what comes out. It may only be the first layer. Everything changed the moment that second clip hit the internet. Not gradually, not quietly, instantly. Because what was already a viral arrest video stopped being just content and turned into something else entirely, a cultural flashpoint. The kind of moment social media doesn't just watch, it consumes. Within hours, timelines were overflowing, not with updates but with arguments. Comment sections became battle zones. Every replay of the footage added new interpretations, new theories, new certainty from people who had only seconds of context. And suddenly, it wasn't just about what happened. It was about who people believed was responsible. That's when the divide formed. On one side, supporters of T.I. pushed back hard against the narrative taking over online. Their argument was consistent. This wasn't control, it was parenting under pressure. Posts started circulating saying things like he's been trying to guide his son in an industry that destroys people without structure. That raising a child in the spotlight is something outsiders don't understand until they're inside it. That what people are calling strictness is actually survival. To them, T.I. wasn't the problem. He was the boundary. But on the other side, the reaction was completely different and far more aggressive. Critics weren't holding back. They framed the situation as something darker, not guidance but pressure, not discipline but escalade. And they pointed directly at the outcome as evidence. If this is guidance, why does it look like this? If this is protection, why is it playing out in public like this? And just like that, the story split in two competing realities. A father trying to hold things together, or a father losing control of something he can't fully manage anymore. And standing at the center of both narratives was King Harris. But King wasn't just being discussed. He was being interpreted. One group saw rebellion, a young figure pushing against structure, testing limits, ignoring consequences, someone who refused to stay in the role assigned to him. Another group saw something completely different. Pressure, expectation. A young man growing up inside a legacy too large to ignore, trying to separate his identity from a name that already carries weight before he even speaks. And that's when the internet did what it always does when it runs out of new information. It went backward. Old clips resurfaced, interviews, live streams, offhand comments that once meant nothing suddenly carried new interpretations. Moments where tension flickered between them were rewatched frame by frame. Not for entertainment anymore, for evidence, because now people weren't just reacting to a night. They were building a timeline. And as the timeline expanded, so did the speculation. Then the industry entered the conversation, and everything escalated again. An anonymous producer posted a message that spread quickly. "I've seen this before. Fame plus family with no boundaries always ends the same way." A radio personality hinted that what the public is seeing is only a fraction of what's happening behind the scenes. And then a verified industry figure posted something that instantly shifted the tone. "This isn't funny. This is what happens when private issues spill into public spaces." No names were mentioned, no direct references were made. But nobody needed them, because everyone already knew what they were talking about. And that's when mainstream media stepped in. Headlines started multiplying. Viral arrest raises questions about family tensions. Leaked footage sparks debate over father-son dynamic. Fans divided after heated confrontation goes public. Once traditional media joins a story like this, it stops being a moment. It becomes an event. And with that, pressure built on every side. People weren't just watching anymore. They were waiting. Waiting for a statement. Waiting for clarification. Waiting for someone involved to step forward and define what actually happened. But nothing came. No official breakdown, no full explanation, no calm response to settle the noise. Just silence. And in situations like this, silence doesn't reduce speculation. It multiplies it. Because without facts, people don't stop talking. They start filling in the gaps themselves. Theories spread faster than updates. Some sounded reasonable. Others were completely detached from reality, but all of them shared one thing in common: uncertainty. And uncertainty is what keeps a story alive long after the moment ends. By this point, the conversation was no longer about a single confrontation. It had evolved into something much larger. A debate about legacy, control, identity, public image, family boundaries, and what happens when all of those collide in front of a camera. Then, just when it felt like the narrative had peaked again, something else surfaced. A final twist. Late the next morning, another clip appeared online. Short, grainy, almost accidental in how it looks, like it was never meant to exist publicly at all. And according to the account that posted it, this footage was taken after the arrest. Not during, not before, after, which immediately raised the most uncomfortable question yet. Who had access to this moment, and why release it now? The clip shows a controlled holding area, quiet, removed from the chaos of earlier footage. The energy is completely different, no shouting, no movement, no crowd. Just stillness. And inside that stillness, King Harris is seen sitting alone. Head slightly lowered. Not performing. Not reacting. Just there. And that image alone shifts the entire tone again. Because after all the noise, all the arguments, all the theories and counter-theories, this moment strips everything back to something far more human. Not a headline, not a narrative, not a debate, just a young figure sitting in the aftermath of something far bigger than the internet versions of the story. And that's where the conversation lands now. Not on what people think happened, but on what happens next. Because at this point, the situation isn't slowing down. It's evolving. And the next development could be the one that finally explains everything, or makes it even harder to understand than before. Just minutes after that clip began circulating, the situation shifted again, not slightly, completely. Because a new post surfaced online, this time from an anonymous account. T claiming direct knowledge of what happened after the arrest, after the confrontation, and after what people are now calling the most intense family moment caught on camera in recent memory. And what it said instantly changed the temperature of the entire story. According to the post, discussions were already happening behind closed doors about what comes next. Not emotional reactions, not social media damage control, real decisions, long-term decisions. The kind that don't get walked back easily. The claim suggested that people close to T were considering stepping back from certain public ties, not as a temporary response, but as a structural change. Something that could affect appearances, collaborations, and even how often the family is seen together in public moving forward. And that alone was enough to shake the internet. Because for years, the image was stability, unity, a family that, despite public noise, always stood together in front of the cameras. But now that image suddenly feels uncertain. What makes it even more intense is what's not being said. Neither T nor King Harris has addressed any of this directly. No clarification, no denial, no explanation to calm the speculation. Just silence. Was this just a moment that spiraled too fast? Or is this the surface of something much deeper that has been building for a long time? That question is now everywhere. Because the more information leaks, the less stable the narrative becomes. One clip suggests tension, another suggests history, another suggests something even more complicated happening behind the scenes that the public was never meant to see. And now, with talk of possible distancing and internal shifts, fans are starting to ask a harder question. Is this still a family matter, or has it become something beyond repair? At the center of it all, King Harris remains the most discussed figure. Some see frustration, others see pressure, others see a young voice trying to exist under a legacy too large to ignore. But even that interpretation is now divided. And as speculation grows, one thing becomes unavoidable. This story is no longer just about a viral moment. It's about everything that led up to it, and everything that might come after it. Because right now, nothing feels settled. And according to the latest whispers online, this may not be the final chapter at all.